Kevin Harvick will always remember the 2022 NASCAR Cup Series season. Like many drivers, he struggled to get a handle on the new next-gen car. That was evident when he had 3 DNFs, or the same number of top 5 finishes, through the season's first 15 races. That 15th race at Gateway was a painful one for the Stewart-Haas Racing driver, who made hard contact with the wall and ended his day early. That crash was noteworthy because Harvick indicated that it was one of the hardest impacts in his career. A couple of months later at Michigan, and just a couple of weeks after Kurt Busch had backed his car into the wall at Pocono during qualifying and was missing his second race due to a concussion, a reporter asked Harvick about the impacts in the new car.
I don't think you're making enough noise. It's never the first line item on the to-do list. So, I can tell you from a driver, every time I hit something, it's a lot harsher than any hit that I took in any of the other cars. The only thing I can compare it to is hitting a concrete wall compared to what it used to be. So, I think that's the issue. It's not, you look at the cars and they're like, oh man, they look great. That's the problem. Nothing flew off of it, right? That's the problem, and all that energy is absorbed through you. So it feels like you get hit by the hammer and the car survives, but is that really what you want? Like, you know what I mean? So, I think, the cars are all together and that looks great, but it doesn't feel great. Did you get it?
The next day, Harvick put all of the safety talk behind him when he went out and snapped his 65-race winless streak and, more importantly, clinched a berth in the playoffs. The following week at Richmond, he did it again. In a matter of 2 weeks, he had gone from a driver some began to suggest might never win again to a potential favorite in the playoffs. Unfortunately, any hopes of advancing far in the postseason took a massive hit during the first race of the playoffs at Darlington, when Harvick was having a good race and running in the top 10, when out of nowhere, flames began surrounding his car. In a matter of seconds, the fire was inside the car. After his night came to an unexpected and disappointing end, the understandably upset driver spoke with reporters and didn't hold back.
We just keep letting cars burn up, letting people crash into stuff, get hurt. Like, we don't fix anything. Now we just riding around out there and the car catches on fire, so just hurts.
Your attitude at this point, obviously, you've been frustrated anyway, but how it affects your race.
Yeah, well, they don't care. It's cheaper to not fix it.
NASCAR Senior Vice President of Competition Scott Miller appeared as a guest on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio a few days later and suggested the driver made his comments during an, quote, emotional time, end quote, and what he had to say was far from the truth. NASCAR sent a rule update out to the teams a day later, allowing them to make changes to the car to prevent future rubber buildup and the risk of more fires. That action caught Harvick's attention. Great week for the sport. No more fires and a badass all-star race location, he tweeted. Now let's be aggressive and get to work on fixing the front, rear, and side impacts for the driver's safety. Before the second race of the playoffs at Kansas, Harvick talked to reporters where he revisited Darlington, his car catching on fire, and NASCAR's response.
Why is the Kevlar burn, Bob? Why is the foam melt? Do we know those answers?
I would think they
because they're not as fire retardant as they should be. The only reason I stopped this weekend is because the flames were coming inside the freaking car. Because it used to all be steel right there, and you look at the foam, all the foam it looks like a marshmallow. So I think now it's all coated with the coating that we presented 2 months ago. That doesn't catch on fire on the right side of the car. So like I say, things have progressed, and we are here today. But it can't be that slow. There's just no reason. It is not fair to the drivers to be compromised like we are right now and not have at least a progress plan. And it's not just a rear clip. It's a front clip, a rear clip, side. Every hit hurts.
When the Athletic's Jeff Gluck asked about a solution, the driver interrupted.
Well, they could do something in the off
I
season.
don't know what the solution is, but I know it needs to be way faster. And if you start in the off season, it's going to be a complete cluster to try to get it done before the clash. So where are we headed here? Like, what's the plan? Every driver in here is tired of hitting the wall and having it hurt. Tired of hitting a car at 20 miles an hour and rearing into somebody and having your Hans lock out. The data, your filtered data may say that it's the same, but it's not the same. It's just time to listen to the driver and stop worrying about the data. So
Harvick was then asked about his thoughts on an independent body in charge of overseeing the safety and implementing the changes.
I don't know. I just know that when it falls into safety, it has to be taken out of the hands of how much it costs, and we're looking at it. That can't be the answer. Like, if you have 4 or 5 guys from teams, and we all have people that analyze parts and analyze the data and analyze the crashes and implement new ideas to solve problems. All the top teams have that. And if you get those guys involved, and you have somebody from NASCAR and somebody from the RTA, but they can listen, that's fine. But there needs to be an independent group that helps speed up this process and understand how it tells the teams in NASCAR how we're going to implement this to fix the safety side of it, because safety has to fall before cost, right? And it doesn't right now.
When Fox's Bob Pockrass asked if Harvick would consider stepping away from the sport because the cars are unsafe, the 2014 champion had a specific concern in mind, and his words proved to be prophetic.
I think that the biggest concern right now is you have another Kurt Busch situation. Like if we just keep letting it go, like why do we want that situation?
After the next week's race at Bristol, where numerous cars experienced steering issues, Harvick posted a tweet with an image of a t-shirt that he was offering on his website, which featured a logo that said, "Happy's crappy ass parts for less." NASCAR's Miller appeared on Sirius XM a couple of days later and responded to Harvick's new t-shirt.
Bristol is definitely a unique load case, and some things cropped up with the steering that weren't expected. But with the newness of this car and the newness of everything, it's not acceptable to have problems, but it's probably part of the learning process for us all. And all the teams and OEMs were involved in the RFP process when we chose the parts, so it's everybody's got a stake in this, and it's not just NASCAR choosing quote unquote crappy parts.
Fast forward a week later to Texas. Harvick might have been eliminated from the playoffs, but just because he wasn't going to be interviewed by the media didn't mean he was going to be quiet. After the race, where Denny Hamlin got spun out by William Byron under caution, the SHR driver once again took aim at NASCAR. "Wait, what? How in the world is this possible?" The driver responded to a tweet from Bob Pockrass about how NASCAR had missed the Hamlin-Byron incident until after the race had gone back to green, and he was just getting started. He fired off multiple tweets on that situation, as well as a couple of others on recovering from his accident in the race, shortening races, closing off pit wall openings, and having a longer break in the season. A couple of days later, when it was announced that Alex Bowman would be missing the race at Talladega after suffering a concussion at Texas, Harvick once again came out firing. "Completely unacceptable that those in charge have let things get to this point. I remember it like it was yesterday," Denny Hamlin, in the presentation of the new car to the drivers, pleading that the car was too stiff. Data didn't agree. Time to listen to the drivers crashing them. On Sunday at Talladega, Harvick finished 29th. After the race, NASCAR announced that it was taking Harvick and Martin Truex Jr.'s cars back to the R&D Center for post-race inspection. Today, NASCAR announced the findings of that inspection, and it included a suspension of Harvick's crew chief Rodney Childers for 4 races, fining him $100,000, and docking the driver and the team 100 points for modification of vendor-supplied parts that affect the aerodynamic properties of the vehicle. It was later reported to be a deck lid that was modified. Unsurprisingly, the 46-year-old driver took to Twitter with a simple response. "Seems strange," he wrote. Childers, who is one of the most active crew chiefs on Twitter, also got in on the action. "Shocker," he tweeted. The punishment is the same as what Brad Keselowski's team experienced earlier in the year, so there's a precedent. But it's hard not to see, as Harvick and Childers both hinted, that this is some sort of retaliatory move by NASCAR. It's also hard not to see how this doesn't continue. Harvick, as evidenced by his tweet, isn't backing down. It has to also make fans of the number 4 team wonder if he will come back next season and deal with this same type of treatment, or if he might just decide now is the right time to walk away.